Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. We're so glad you joined us on what I think is a very special day, one of 6 days when humanity left Earth and put their feet on another world, that being the Apollo 12 launch. Today, November 14th, 1969, 55 years later, kind of wondering if anyone would mention it on the evening news. In my mind, and maybe y'all space geeks' minds, it should be a national holiday. I'm going to reach over here to get my smart tablet and thank Marty Winkle, who's in Long Island. Hi, Marty.
Hey, Mark.
I know
Hope
they
you're
can
doing
hear
well.
you out there, and I'm trying to. There we are. So I'll be able to talk to all of our friends there. Mind, and maybe y'all space geeks' minds, it should there you be a go. National holiday. I've had quite a frenzy. I left Cocoa, Florida at about quarter after, maybe 25 after 3, and grateful to be sitting here talking to all you folks there. So give me a shout out there that we're coming through loud and clear. Sorry we're a little late. We got struck by lightning. Ha ha ha, like Apollo 12 did 55 years ago. There's Cliff Watson, first one in Pomona, Australia. Hey, Cliffy, how's the end of spring coming there for y'all down there? I'm going to put my glasses on because I'll be reading a lot today, and a little. We've had a little time getting on board here for various reasons, but so grateful that Marty's doing this from um, afar up there. So from SCC to AUX, we're going to talk about everything about these guys. One piece of memorabilia that I come across, nice little cardboard stock of Pete Conrad, Dick Gordon, and Alan Bean over there. Alan's there, Dick's there. Quite a cohesive crew of Navy mates. They were both Navy, um, enlisted in the Navy, and taught at Pox River how to fly, and had a lot of fun going to the moon, had a lot of fun talking about it afterwards there. So there's Steve Jokums. Hello to you, Steve. We're all staying curious, and a special hi to Marty there for you. Tommy UCX watching. And so up in Pennsylvania, and Bill Whiting's in Michigan, and Doug Forrest is in Los Angeles. So Australia to LA and in between. We've got stuff going on. So I hope you enjoy our program here. We didn't get a chance to load a question for Marty, but I'm gonna have a bunch of questions for you all there. And Carlton Bailey's up there in Landis-Scene Astronaut Hebe, and he's watching us on Stay Curious. I wanted to get out there and see Rick, but got a lot on my plate right now to take care of, and just didn't make it today. But and this was his last day out there. That astronaut Rick Hebe was one of 3 astronauts to grab the Intel satellite on STS-49, the only 3-person EVA in the history of mankind. So we're going to kick off today. Like I said, everything about Apollo 12, some cool images maybe you haven't seen before. How about this question out there? Where is the scoop from from Surveyor 3 that Apollo 12 brought back to Earth? Where is that scoop? And I'm going to show you a picture of it. So let's kick it off with two very special birthdays. If you haven't wished him a happy birthday yet on social media, you'll want to. Fred Hayes, 91 years old, born November 14th, 1933 in Biloxi, Mississippi. In this photo of him, he is with our good friend Hazel Banks. Hey, Hayes, didn't you know I was going to show that on you today? This was at the Apollo 50th anniversary 5 years ago, and Hazel looks just as beautiful now as she did then. She was the executive secretary to the Apollo astronauts, and should have seen the big smile on Fredo's face when she saw Hazel. Fred also is a great friend of the American Space Museum as our president emeritus, and he is a best friend of our ASM godfather, Charlie Mars, who spearheaded this museum the last 20 years. Charlie was a retired NASA manager in Apollo. Fredo helped raise money to build Apollo and shuttle monuments 10 years ago in Spaceview Park in downtown Titusville. And probably could have been a moon voyager, was going to walk on the moon on Apollo 13, and Probably could have gone back on 17. The crews were chosen, but he went to work for Grumman that built that fabulous machine that is the only vehicle made to operate in the weightlessness of space, vacuum of space, not return to Earth and blast off another world. And Marty Winkle, my co-producer here, he had his gloved hands all over that Lunar Module 6 we're going to talk about today as an electrical engineer. Didn't you, Marty?
Sure did, Mark.
Yeah, well, you know I like to brag about you, and you can chime in here anytime, particularly when I say Apollo 14 that I've been saying all day long instead of Apollo 12, and thanks for catching that. Um, Marty brought Fred and a lot of the astronauts uh, to these annual reunions that the Grumman uh, uh, employees would have on the Space Coast, and I was privileged to be at a few of them. And that last one was that was in 2022, wasn't it, Marty?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and because of Marty, I got to spend some private time with Fred, and he's not real feeble, but he was a little imbalanced, and he held my arm as I walked him across the Radisson banquet room over to where everyone was eating cocktails over at the Quonset Hut, drinking cocktails at the Quonset Hut. So I'm so blessed to have been around this man. Uh, Marty, one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet, right?
Who, me or Fred?
Yeah, both. You both have that calm demeanor there. That's right. Yeah. Well, I do mean Fred in this instance.
Yes, he's great. We love Fred.
Yeah,
Wish he was able to travel and come visit us again.
and he gives an appreciation that he's even alive. He really does. And we will be selling at our auction that we're going to be talking about tomorrow a half hour with Fred Hayes. Talk to him about whatever you want on Zoom. Whatever price you can get out of that, it'll be sold. They've sold them for up to $1,000, and he talks longer than a half an hour. I guarantee you that. Chuck Jeffrey, our collections manager, has been responsible for that. But Fredo, we love you. He's just a national treasure. There he is with Gordon Fullerton. Hi, Marie Fullerton, the spouse who I'm privileged to know through Mark and Tom Usiak. That's a little out of fuzz there, but they were important to the shuttle program. And Fredo was supposed to take the shuttle number 3, I think, to the Hubble Space Telescope. Or not to the Hubble Space Telescope. They were going to go to, what were they going to do? Anyway, I get sidetracked there. Forgive me. Hayes wrote the 2023 book, Never Panic Early. Hadn't read it, Marty. I know you did. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it's a very good book, yeah.
He
I like the book
illuminated.
'cause I can relate to a lot of things he's talking about.
Good. He about a lot about Apollo 13 in April 1970, and of course, NASA people say that is an accurate representation, pretty much, of the events and the culture. Uh, let's see. Hayes, a Marine, URA, was selected for the 1966 group of Apollo astronauts, and commander of Shuttle Enterprise on the approach and landing tests. And in his retirement, he's very giving. He helped create the Infinity Science Center on the Louisiana-Mississippi border in Pearlington, Mississippi on I-10. I've been there a couple times. It's really an amazing center it is, Infinity Science Museum. So read up more about him. Enjoy what everybody says about Fredo on social media. I saw some Space Hipster posts today and so forth. And if you win in our auction, that's going to be a week from Saturday, our charity auction, you can talk to him about anything you want, one-on-one, for up half an hour and probably more. So, also another cool astronaut, 5-time spaceman Ken Bowersox is celebrating his birthday today. He is 68 years old. Kenneth Dwayne Bowersox, November 14th, 1956, in Portsmouth, Virginia. What other nickname could he have than Sox, right? Considers Bedford, Indiana to be his hometown. though, also the hometown of Charlie Walker. We'll be seeing him out at the Space Center the week before Thanksgiving, or a couple days before Thanksgiving. Bedford, Indiana. Ken Bowersox, where he grew up, though he's born in Portsmouth, Virginia. A 5-flight veteran, he was the youngest commander of a space shuttle. And I believe it almost just under 39 years old. I think he was 38 years old. And that was STS 73. 2 EVAs outside the shuttle for more than 13 hours. So rare that a pilot commander is also involved with EVA. So, and he is now, I think, NASA's Space Operations Mission Director. He spent some time with SpaceX. There he is in space. Like to meet him, Marty. I'll bet he's a great personality. We see him a lot on the press conferences and so forth. Well, there's President Kennedy talking at Johnson Space Center, I believe, with all the big shots. There's Webb in the background and Gilruth, the bald guy, and Vice President Johnson as what they thought the lunar module would look like, all right? But it never came to look like that. Grumman took a hold of it and made it sleeker and more spidery-like. But forever, I think you're going to hear President Kennedy's speech that we will go to the moon and return safely before the end of the decade. Not because it's easy, but because it's hard, all right? And so, you know, that lives on. And one thing I always point out is that on Apollo 12 in November 1969, we doubled down on President Kennedy's pledge to go to space, all right? And I thought I had a couple other slides in there, Marty. Maybe they're going to come along the way there differently, or I'd be surprised there. Let's look at the emblem of Apollo 14. Go to your hymnals, the mission patch handbook there, okay? Apollo 12. Grab it here. Oh, gee, it goes real quick compared to all those. The Clipper ship signifies the crew's Navy background and symbolically relates the era of the Clipper ship to the era of spaceflight. The Clipper ship is arriving at the moon and represents the command module Yankee Clipper. The ship trails fire and flies the U.S. flag. The mission name and the crew names are on a wide gold border with a small blue outline. Blue and gold are traditionally Navy colors. The patch has 4 stars on it, one each for the 3 astronauts who flew the mission, and one for Clifton Williams, who was killed on October 5th, 1967 in a crash of his T-38 jet. Clifton Williams trained with Conrad and Gordon as part of the backup crew for what would be the Apollo 9 mission, and would have been assigned as the lunar module pilot for Apollo 12. The portion of the moon shown represents the Ocean of Storms, where the Apollo 12 planned to land. Artist Victor Kraft created the artwork. So the launch was November 14th, 1969, 11:22 a.m. in a slight drizzle for people that were there, and the drama started then. And they landed 10 days later in the South Pacific Ocean. Now, what was the name of the lunar module? Yankee Clipper was the orbiter, okay. So Steve Jochum says, Marty, that picture may have been at Grumman. That's why I fudged on that, because I believe he's right there. But it doesn't look anything like the Grumman final product. What do you say, Marty? That picture of Kennedy, was that? I think that
could be, but my monitor is so small. I just could not look at the details.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you, Steve. I don't doubt him if he's saying that I've said something that might not be exactly right. So we'll look that up later. But just glad you're all watching here. Tom Celentano met Bowersox a couple times, and Mitch Rothman says that Fred Hayes would have commanded Apollo 19 before Budget Kits killed the mission, and that's a good tip to know. As a space geek, that'd be a great question someday. All right, let's see what I got here. There's the crew, and of course you can tell Pete Conrad with the gap in his tooth, and you got the handsome uh, Gordon Cooper, Gordon there, okay, and then Al Bean, Dick Gordon and Al Bean. All right. So let's go. I love that picture there of them. There they are, casual with one of their Corvettes outside, looking calm. Maybe they're just getting done at the flight crew training building there. Look how stealth these guys are, working out. They're ripped, and most, I think they were kind of small guys. Conrad was the shortest. I think he was 5'6", and what was his first words on the moon? All right. Yep, Steve's got it there. The LEM 12 was intrepid, keeping with the Navy theme of a spaceship. There's another cool picture you might not have seen of them. All right, the three of them there. The bond of these three men was incredible. So sad that Pete Conrad died in a freak motorcycle accident at age 69 in 1999. The other two lived to be in their 80s, and of course, Al Bean become a great artist in there. And there's the go out of the Saturn V rocket. Beautiful view of that, probably from the VAB, I would guess, with a little bit of a telephoto lens. And the launch. And then the goals of Apollo 12 focused on science, including the investigation of the lunar surface environment and placing the first Apollo lunar surface experiment package, ALSEP, and obtaining samples from a second lunar MARIA, enhancing the capability of human exploration. Also, pinpoint accuracy, as it was going to land next to the crater where the Surveyor 3 spacecraft had landed on its three legs as a robot with a camera and solar panels and a couple other simple experiments on it. It had landed there a year and a half earlier. But as it was launched, lightning struck the Saturn V 36.5 seconds after liftoff, triggered by the vehicle itself, the static electricity of it. The static discharge caused a voltage transient that knocked all three fuel cells offline. And there is one of the few pictures you'll see of that. Oh, good, that is in there. Okay. I was looking for.
Are you sure that's Apollo 12 launch?
Pardon me?
Kind of looks like Apollo 17 launch. Looks like a night launch.
That one?
Yeah.
Well, I think I've double checked that, but it could be. But that's how dark it was with at that launch at 11 o'clock. But if I've got the wrong slide in there, I will correct that. But there is one of the very few pictures. Lightning struck this going into the cloud, and you see it hitting the escape tower there, and a second strike 2 seconds later knocked out the 8-ball attitude indicator. The telemetry stream at Mission Control was garbled, but the Saturn V continued to fly normally. The strikes had not affected the Saturn V instrument unit, okay, the IU guidance system, which functioned independently from the command service module. The astronauts unexpectedly had a board red with caution lights, warning lights from the batteries, but they couldn't tell exactly what was wrong. So what was wrong was the Electrical Environmental Consumables Manager, ECOM, John Aaron, shown right there, remembered a telemetry failure pattern from an earlier test when a power loss caused a malfunction in the CSM signaling conditioning electronics, the SCE, Signal Conditioning Electronics SCE, which converted raw signals from instrumentation to data that could be displayed on the mission controls consoles. And John Aaron knew how to fix it. Aaron made a call, flight, ECOM, try SCE to AUX, to switch to SCE to a backup power supply. The switch was fairly obscure. Neither Flight Director Gerald Griffin, Capcom Jerry Carr, nor Conrad knew what it was. Al Bean, who was the lunar module pilot, was the spacecraft's engineer. He knew where to find and threw the switch, after which the telemetry came back online, revealing no significant malfunctions. Bean put the fuel cells back online, and the mission continued. And this was an incredible that it didn't blow up. It didn't go haywire in a different direction. All right, um, just incredible. Initially, it was feared the lightning strike could have damaged the explosive bolts that opened the command module's parachute compartment. The decision was made not to share this with the astronauts and to continue with the flight plans, since they would die if the parachutes failed to deploy, whether following an Earth orbit abort or upon a return from the moon. Good point. They were going to die anyway if they tried an abort if it wasn't working. So nothing was to be gained by aborting. The parachutes deployed and functioned normally at the end of the mission. I'd not really heard anything about that drama on the landing 14 days later or 10 days later. So, but wow, what a close call. John Aaron, immortalized basically in our space geek world. And yep, Jerry Carr, commander of the rookie commander of Skylab 4, was the Capcom who made the call. Mitch Rothman was doing a very cool thing in Oklahoma over the week, where the movie called The Astronaut and the Artist, the astronaut's Jerry Carr and the artist is his wife. And Mitch, if you throw her name in there, I'll share that with everybody else. And Neil 1030 says he thinks the image of 12 being hit by lightning was from the show From Earth to the Moon. And I wouldn't doubt that. You can't find a picture of anything. I put this together. There's a couple artists I asked if I could use permission, their artwork of it, and they declined. But thank you, Neil, for telling me that, because I've tried to research the heck out of that image, and it just looks a little bit weird to me. So thank you. And Tom Musiak confirms, Marty, that is STS-12 back here. Okay. The camera exposure made the sky look dark, and that's what I thought. The sky was dark, so they had to open up the f-stops a lot more, which made the background dark to capture the light there. So, whew, thank you for getting me off the hook there, Tommy. But no, honestly, I make a lot of mistakes, and though I try to minimize that, I appreciate everybody correcting us. Anyway, yeah. So let's thank you all chiming in. We've got the best audience out there. Let's see here. Next should come up this picture. There's John Aaron. You know, something. I believe he's from Oklahoma State or University of Oklahoma, up there at the Cosmosphere in outside of Oklahoma City. There in Oklahoma City, and then almost an hour down the road in Weatherford is Tom Stafford's fabulous museum. A bunch of these engineers came from Oklahoma University or Oklahoma State, one of them, and they really brag about that, and as they should. Great engineering schools. What happened? All right. Second manned mission to the moon was planned to execute a precise landing, and they did. There is our spaceship. I tell people when I show them this in a model form, not very Star Wars or Star Trek-y looking, very crude, very little of it can the astronauts get in. They don't get in the cylinder part here. They don't get in where the legs are, the descent stage of the lunar module there. And Marty, you know what that picture has that's inaccurate, unless that's the fourth on the back. It's got four. You see the landing probe.
Landing probe.
Yeah, but it looks that wouldn't be on that pad going down the ladder. They're afraid it'd get stuck and punch their spacesuit. So we're gonna say that's the one on the leg behind there, aren't we, Marty? But I noticed stuff like that because Marty taught me that on there. But this is the way 3 days to the moon, actually, and 3 days back just without the lunar module, and they really didn't get in the lunar module until approaching the last day to go into lunar orbit to check things out. So pretty cramped in that 3-man spacecraft all the time. Where is Apollo 12? AS507. Where is it? I think I've got two ideas. I'm looking at one, on a piece of paper I had at another place. So someone tell me where AS50 Apollo Service Module 507, aka Apollo 12 is. But Marty chose this background that exemplifies the whole thing about the lunar module. The only spacecraft still built, no one's ever built one, to operate in the vacuum of space with the astronauts standing up and landing on an alien world with the ability to launch off that world, and then it can never come back to Earth again. Nobody's done that yet again. So, all right, the mission was 10 days and Conrad and Bean spent a little more than 31 hours on the moon. And the launch of Apollo 12 was the only time a sitting president, Richard Nixon, attended the launch of an Apollo mission. Okay. And there is the ellipse path. I'm familiar looking at things like this, and you may not all be. September 69 was when this map was made from a lunar orbiter spacecraft. That is why the lines are there. That is the way it transmitted the scanned film back to Earth. This is the ellipse of where they wanted to get close to. I would imagine that this crater or one of these craters here is a Surveyor crater that they wanted to get close to. But if they got within that ellipse, they could walk to the Surveyor crater. And this is what the actual astronauts looked at to when they got that close through binoculars and telephoto lenses. They would go over it once or twice before the attempted landing. There is one of the latest images of the lunar module. I question, that looks like a lunar. There's the lunar module right there at the top. You see it throwing a shadow. You can barely see the trace of the outlines. And then over here by my head is where the Surveyor 3 spacecraft is. And you see their path that they walked around. Kind of circuitous to get down there. They weren't sure they could get down there to it. And look at how spectacular it was to see images in 1966 or 7, whenever this was. I think it was late 66, of the Surveyor spacecraft. And it landed in a crater, and it was on the side of the crater. If it had landed up where these Apollo 9 landed, it would have seen more of the moon and the horizon and so forth. But it saw enough for us to want to go back there. And there you have another Surveyor lunar. This is the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that's been orbiting the moon for 12 years. And there you see some of the imprints in the Earth there. Where is Apollo 12, Steve? He gives a hats off to Chicago Iron and Bridge Works, which is what von Braun's group was called. Thank you for that tidbit. And love these pictures. There's another, I think it's an Indian orbiter around the moon. We'll have to do a show on that. That routinely we take the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and put it over where even crashed spacecraft landed. They have seen the Intuitive Machines lander on its side. The India, its lander, they've imaged where that is. Well, there's Apollo 12, all right? 23 feet tall. I tell people it's like a 2-story apartment, but the only room you can use is the bathroom. And Marty sat in that tiny little space there with the hump for the Ascent engine, like a Volkswagen Band's hump in its engine there. Marty's talked about that many, many times. Marty, anything unique about Apollo 12? It launched in November. I'll give you a question. When did you have it finished?
I'm not sure what you mean. Probably with tanking on the launch pad just prior to launch. So it's finished at that point.
Okay. Yeah, you were actually...
It's kind of hard to say when it was... It's kind of hard to define exactly when it was finished.
Okay. Because you were going in there while the Saturn V sometimes was on the pad and changing batteries and things like that, correct?
Well, we installed the batteries at the pad.
Did you? All right.
That's probably about That's probably about 3 weeks out.
Okay. Were they Delco or AutoZone batteries? I
uh,
bet they're. I'd like to see a picture of those batteries. I bet they were pretty. Certainly not anything like the NiCad batteries, right?
they were silver oxide batteries.
Okay. All
So
right.
it
Let's
means
see
that,
what else we got racked up here, Marty. You want to brag about? There's a Surveyor spacecraft. It had a scoop on it. These are the trenches that the scoop made. It basically tested the tensile strength. All right. However, the spacecraft was covered with a kind of a brownish dust on it, and they figured out that that was actually covered up from the landing of the lunar module Intrepid. It threw out, of course, a lot of dust in the weightless 1/6 gravity there, and with no atmosphere. So that was kind of a false positive. There's actual photo of it in action that we would see, not movies, but a series of photographs it would take. The dots are there to give size dimensions of things. And it took a bunch of panorama photos, including up at the top where the lunar module Intrepid landed so accurately. You see a surveyor pad right there. So very difficult exposures, as you photographers can see by the light and dark areas there. This is very primitive ways to transmit images from 250,000 miles away. And of course, one of the book iconic images that will be in books forever is one of the astronauts there. I'm thinking it's Pete, and because Al Bean said he took the photo, but correct me if it's the other way around. And Al Bean was going to wanted to take a selfie with his Hasselblad camera of he and Pete standing beside the the Surveyor spacecraft. It was kind of a joke. He had a tripod for it, but he couldn't find the button, the release button that has a timer on it. Tom Usiak knows about that, Hasselblad man, and it was in his. It was just too far deep in his glove pocket with those gloves to get in. Too deep in his pocket for his gloves to get into. So, kind of glad he didn't make that picture. That would really fuel the fire for the conspiracy people. And I'm looking forward to blocking a whole bunch of people on Facebook and so forth as we celebrate this, because don't watch us if you believe we didn't go to the moon. Simple as that. I respect your opinion, but you don't need to push your opinion on a museum full of artifacts that are part of this program. So great photo there. The scoop is where? Where is the scoop? I don't know. I think I lost you out there. Where's the scoop and where's the Apollo 12 command module? Well, there is what didn't happen. As Al Bean took a few color photos, setting up this camera system that worked so perfectly on Apollo 11 and mesmerized us from 11:30 at night till 1:30 in the morning in Eastern Standard Time on July 20th, 21st, 1969. None of that was going to happen. As Al carried this to set it down, so we could see what was going on with the guys, the lens cap came off and it accidentally was exposed. That Vidicon tube, I believe it's called, to the sun, and it burned it out. And it's much like dropping your cell phone. I bet nobody's ever done that, and you get it cracked and you see all the weirdness on there. So that was really a sad thing that happened. They also left a film back from the Hasselblad camera of color film on the moon, and but nonetheless, we heard a lot on the radio of the transcription of what they were doing. But doggone it, I certainly would have liked to see them climb down to the Surveyor 3 live with this camera. And here is the first ALSEP being set up. Yes, the Apollo 11 set out a few experiments like the laser reflector and the solar wind experiment that looked like a sheet of aluminum foil. But it wasn't the elaborate that this was with a nuclear power in it. let's see. Just to say that correctly there, uh, when Bean carried the camera to place near the lunar module to be set up, he inadvertently pointed directly at the sun, destroying the secondary electron conduction, another SEC tube. Can you believe that? So SEC is twice in the legends of Apollo 12. One good and one bad. SEC to AUX, or AUX, to save the mission. Television coverage of the mission was thus terminated almost immediately, and people turned their attention to Thanksgiving and Christmas. Feeling treacherous footing that might topple them, they approached Surveyor cautiously, descending the crater some distance away, then following a contour to reach it. But solid footing was there and very stable to walk. They collected several pieces of the Surveyor, including the television camera, as well as taking rocks that had been studied by the television a year and a half before. So, two EVAs, they went out the first time and set up the ALSEP, and then the second time they went down in there. So, all right, here they are working with one of the initial hands-on things there. And Marty, I'm not seeing anybody comment in here. Somebody comments, so I know that you're watching. Last thing I seen was Steve at 15 minutes ago. So
There's several comments, Mark.
well, Steve's last one is 4:36. Anyway, here is the typical scene with engineers and astronauts learning how to use this. Actually, that in front of them is the radioactive canister where the radioactive pellet was to put into the ALSEP. There's Bean working it up. Now, after this mission, you say, was that Bean or is that Conrad? Well, this was Bean's job, so we know it's him. The next mission, Apollo 13, had stripes on the shoulders and the thighs of the astronauts, so we could tell who was who. And there is the camera disassembled by the astronauts, cut with cable cutters there at the bottom. And it is in the Cosmosphere in Hutchinson, Kansas. Hutchinson, Kansas, yes, in there. So, well, nobody's commented. That's got me puzzled. Because I see I'm live on it. Any rate, I looked at that. That's a photograph I took of it. They also, no, wait a minute. I think I'm wrong. That could be the Smithsonian. Somebody correct me there. I know that is in Hutchinson at the Cosmosphere. I've got that backwards. How could they have both things? But there it is there. And a panorama of Apollo 12 there to kind of look at the whole scene there. They get a beautiful panorama with a selfie of one of the astronauts in it. The classic shot, again, another one with the Intrepid, the radio dish antenna to communicate with the Earth. Okay, you've got, then this is when they came back, the landing and the quarantine, looking at him there. Well, when Conrad, the shortest man of the initial group of astronauts, stepped onto the lunar surface, his first words were, "Whoopee! Man, that may have been a small one for Neil, but that's a long one for me." And thus, this was not an off-the-cuff remark. Conrad made a $500 bet with reporter Orania Falassi, a lady reporter, that he would say these words after she had queried whether NASA had instructed Neil Armstrong what to say as he stepped off the moon. Now, $500 is like $5,000. Conrad later said he was never able to collect the money. So, but he did say that. Marty, do you see any comments I'm not seeing?
Yes, Mark, there's quite a few comments.
Okay. Well,
maybe you want to restart.
Yeah, well, sorry, guys. I don't know what the deal is here. And I'm going to go back like that and go down like that and restart it like that. Oh, well, there we are. Okay, guys. Uh, the Vatican, yeah, the Vatican tube. It was first used successfully on Apollo 14. Okay, and thank you guys. And I miss you commenting there. Uh, all right, all right, that's it. Southwestern Oklahoma State University in Weatherford, Tom Stasser's hometown. I knew Mitch would know that. Pat Music is the artist with the artist and the astronaut. And of course, the astronaut being Jerry Carr. And we hope to feature that movie at Shuttlefest. And I know Mitch will have me have the news on that for me. Uh, Yankee Clippers on display at the Virginia Air and Space in Hampton, Virginia. And that's what I thought too. Oh, I know the picture, but I've got National Air and Space Museum on my notes. So let's cross that out. Would the launch have been scrubbed if Nixon had not been in attendance? That's a good question because of the iffy weather. But Tom Celentano says he read that launch managers thought it was safe to launch because the pilot of Air Force One said they did not detect any electricity in the clouds when they landed. All right. Still, in hindsight, uh, and they never all of the Apollo moon landing shots or forever Apollo 9 and 10 also went on time. 2 hour delay, I think, on 17. Now, they did get 45 minutes of video before the camera burned out, said Mark Geiger. I've seen some of that. Thank you. And the Surveyor camera is at the National uh, Air and Space Museum, and Scoop is in Cosmosphere. Thank you, Steve. That's what I suspected. Have you seen the Scoop with your own eyes, Steve? Because I have, and I stare at that stuff for a while and just go, "Wow!" It was on the moon. It scooped up moon dirt, uh, and yeah, we wouldn't launch in that kind of weather right now, except SpaceX has, all right, a few times. We've seen so many launches. I remember a couple of them where I'm going, really? They're going to launch today? And Carlton Bailey knows what I'm talking about. He's getting that autograph with Rick Heeb today. So give me a call tonight, CB. We'll catch up on there. So, all right, guys. Thank you all for watching today. Want to tell you something fun to watch is see at the bottom left the Apollo 12 parody reel. You go to YouTube, put in Apollo 12 parody, you're going to see a movie that they made after their landing. All right. They're going around sports cars in the rain out to the pad. They are falling down and got paperwork that they've got on the moon to do. Very elaborate thing. The Three Stooges make an appearance in it, and and so does Hazel Banks make an appearance in it. Though I took that out, Hazel, for you. It's a very funny scene where Dick Gordon's orbiting the moon and Hazel comes up in a bikini, and she was a very beautiful woman now and then, of course. So they also had on their wrists were some. Uh, of course, what they were supposed to do. Like you see a football player now have on there, the quarterback's got the plays on their sleeve there. Well, they had that to tell them where they were supposed to be. That was kind of ingenious with a spiral notebook. In a couple of those, they may have had a Playboy model pose for them and say something, have you seen any mountains or hills lately? And I'm getting away from showing that information as in good fun and some just not politically correct maybe in today's climate. So nonetheless, the Three Stooges are part of this Apollo parody. You will love it when you see it. They just make fun of everything, and in fact, Hazel was given one of the original copies of this at her retirement party when she left. Right at Apollo 15 was her last mission, and then she went on to bigger and better things, becoming the executive secretary of Mr. Ralph, the Buffalo Bills owner, Ralph not Wilson, Mr. Ralph Wilson. So anyway, you will enjoy watching the Apollo 12 parody if you Google it. Three Stooges, they helped land the thing. So made it back safely. Okay. There is the Kapton foil that's peeled off on reentry. Some of that frogmen peeled off, put in their little pockets, and it might be able for sale to you at the next space memorabilia auction of the American Space Museum, November 23rd. There they are. I'm saying that's not that's the rescue crew because they had to put hazmat suits on inside to get out there. So that's not the astronauts there. They had to put hazmat suits on inside there. So, and there it is. All right, you all tell me that's a place I've never been. Okay, the Virginia Air and Space Center in Hampton, Virginia. That could be Mark Usiak's photo or Tom Usiak's. Uh, And Sundog 7, you're right. Landing that close to Surveyor was quite an accomplishment. It demonstrated the quality of equipment as well as the skill of the astronauts 55 years ago there, Sundog, we're talking about. I mean, just think about that. How many pounds of moon rocks did the crew bring back? Well, guess what there, Dean Babcock? I have the Wikipedia here on that. So let's see what they did bring back. I'm only thinking it's about 80 pounds or something like that. That doesn't give me a quickie original thing there. Let's see if I can find it scanning there. If somebody knows how many pounds they brought back. Crew training, geology. It's usually in one of the little boxes there. I'm going to say 120 pounds at the most. I'm going to say, I think it's like 90. No, by the way, the backup crew was Dave Scott, Al Warden, and Jim Irwin, who flew, you're right, rotated out 3 missions later to Apollo 15. So, can't pull that rabbit out of my hat there on how many pounds were brought back. I do know the total was about 950. Yeah, Marty.
Steve Hogan's saying 75 pounds.
All right, Steve. I believe that. I said about 90. Mark Geiger, great story when they docked and how much dust was in the lunar module. They looked very dirty, and Gordon had them vacuum off. And that's right. Do not get in my clean spaceship. I'm now responsible for you guys getting home safely as the command module pilot. And thank you guys for chiming in there. And Mark Geiger, that's an excellent point there. And how do you know the story of this? Okay. This is a wedding ring. The Apollo 12 wedding ring. And I forget, I don't have my notes on why I have that in there. I think this is the wedding ring that Charlie Mars, our godfather, had one of the astronauts take to the moon back. And they sold it on we sold it on eBay. Not eBay, on our auction. But there is a story where I think, Marty, is it Charlie Duke? His wedding ring got lost in the lunar module or the command module, and during the stand-up EVA. No, he didn't do it. He's standing up while Warden is not Warden. That'd be in 16. While who had been the Evans? No, Rosas. Stu Rosas would have been doing the translunar EVA. Anyway, the wedding ring hit in somebody's helmet as it came out, and they caught it miraculously. I seem to think that was Charlie Dukes.
Yeah, that's close. Yeah, Mark. It's very similar to that. I don't know the exact story, but it sounds about right. Yeah. I know it wasn't Rusa. It happened on a later flight.
Thank you. Yeah, Rusa was 15. Warden 15, Rusa 16, Evans 17. All right, there is President Kennedy out at our Space View Park, a beautiful statue of him delivering that famous speech on May 25th, 1961. And we not only fulfilled that, President Kennedy, in July 20th, 69, but when we landed again, and I think the landing date is November 16, or is it 17? Should be a national holiday. July 20th should be a national holiday for sure.
But hey, Mark, Steve Hogan saying that it was Ken Mattingly's ring.
Okay. Thanks, Ken. Okay. And Babcock's got a photo that was signed by Al Bean showing his ascent from the lunar surface. You can buy, yeah, that's worth some money, as was his things. The ring was on 16. Thank you, Doug Forrest. It was Charlie Dukes on there. And, you know, the rest is history. All right. It was a great mission, except for that doggone camera tube breaking up. All right. And there the guys are right there. Oh, that was my first slide. That was the one I was looking for, Marty, and it makes more an appropriate last slide there. Three brothers like none other from the Navy. They are each buried at Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C., within sight of each other, I'm going to say. I do know that I think Al Bean was the last one to pass away. And it was his wishes to be, they were all wanted to be buried near each other out at Arlington Cemetery. And so just, I know many of you, like the Usiak brothers, have met Bean and Gordon at Space Fest. And of course, Al Bean become a awesome artist using plaster as his medium to paint on, taking a lunar boot that he had from the moon and putting an impression there. He's got his hammer that he would pound into the clay as it hardened. And then he found on his patch that he looked up that was framed off his spacesuit. He said, wait a minute. And he took it out and flecked off pieces of the moon on it and put it in a base paint there. So some of his paintings sell for $30,000 to $100,000. And some of those will be, these autographs of these guys will be on sale a week from Saturday in there. So thank you, Dean Babcock, for the recap of the mission. I may hit it up again next week with some of the rare photos that you see on Flickr. Flickr has a very cool section called Apollo Archives, and you can see all of the photographs taken by the Apollo astronauts through their cameras with as if looking at the film strip of it. And I've done that many times and started harvesting things on there. So thank you all for watching today. I know I wanted to mention one thing. Streptococcus mitis, since I had a printout of that. It was thought that when they brought back the camera that it had the common cold germ in it, okay? And it was in there, but returned to the moon in a nylon duffel bag and was not in the type of airtight sealed metal container that the lunar samples of earlier Apollo missions were. It is therefore possible it was contaminated by the astronauts in the environment of the Apollo 12 capsule itself, all right? It was a big deal about a microbe was found on the moon, that if it was eluded the White Room, that it survived a year and a half on the lunar surface in a vacuum. And that would be a big deal for the hardiness of life or microbes on the moon. But they're pretty sure that it was contaminated somewhere along the way. So after it was harvested from the moon. So thank you folks for that. I appreciate everybody enjoying our recap of the Apollo 12 mission. Certainly you won't see an hour recap of it on the news today, but go get you a good old documentary on YouTube. Watch that Apollo 12 parody. You'll be laughing, I guarantee. So anyway, thank you all for watching. I was looking at another comment there. I'm going to skip that one there and pick up on that later. Tomorrow we're going to look at the auction, some of the cool items on there. This is a terrific auction. You can buy everything from things that were owned by Bob Seek, the launch director. All right, he's got things on there that he's not making any money on it. And he's given all the money to the Challenger Center. Okay, the Challenger Center is honors the Challenger astronauts, and Bob was he was not the launch director for that flight, but he certainly was in the room when that happened. And Nick Sedler, thank you for the thumbs up there. So I'm going to go through some of the lots so you don't have to, but you can bid now. Go to our website, get on our auction page. It'll take you to the website where you can look for free or register and make a bid right now. And if you see something that you think you'd pay $200 for and hope it goes for 100, well, if it never gets up to more than 100, you get it for that, plus the 20% charity fee that we're going to tack on to help keep our doors open here at the American Space Museum. So thank you, Steve Jokums. Add Astra to you and everybody out there. My God, this was man's greatest adventure. We've never even come close to putting humans back on the moon in over 50 years, okay? And though I pray and hope that we can, let's just hope that it's Americans first and not some other country. But this was a technological achievement with technology that you couldn't even use today in your home. All right, your phone, whatever you're touching, has got more technology than the computer power of all these hardware that we talked about today. And I'd like to say a personal thank you to my friend Marty Winkle and all of his hard-working Grumman engineers and technicians. 1,500 engineers here on the Space Coast, led by a tremendous team that did not know how to build something like this, and they did. And it not only worked perfectly, Marty, your friends and all of their expertise kept 3 human beings alive on Apollo 13 in this magnificent machine that can't understate what an achievement it was 55 years ago. So with that, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you tomorrow to show you our auction and bridge the space between us.